we believe that there is value in having our teams together. We say all the time, like, our business is a team sport. Communication and speed of communication, effectiveness of communication is highly, highly valuable.
This is the Workplace Therapist Show. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of the show is one singular thing, and that is to help you have better conversations at work and, of course, better, healthier relationships at work. And so today we're going to talk about something particularly timely, probably on your mind. My guess is almost certainly on your mind, and that is, how do we navigate reentry into the workplace? How do we think about bringing our folks back, even if it's just for a meeting on a Wednesday? How do we think about that? What are some approaches we need to take? And what are some things we need to be on the lookout for? So to help us on this journey, I've got a good friend and colleague and a fantastic guest who's been on the show before, Shane Jackson. Shane, good to have you back on the show.
It's great to be back. I love being on here with you and just getting to talk to you in general. So thanks for letting me do it.
And I'm really excited about this topic because, so just to orient everybody, so you're the president of Jackson Healthcare. Right. But how many folks are in Jackson Healthcare?
We have about 1,500 what we call our internal associates, and then we have, and I don't actually know the number, but it's somewhere around 7,000 or 8,000 external associates. These are our doctors and nurses and pharmacists and that work all over the country.
Yeah, so this has been, so not only are you president of this business in general, but this business has played a critical role over the last 6 months.
Absolutely.
In terms of supporting our healthcare providers and systems out there and kind of navigating COVID. And why I'm so excited to have you on the show today is because you guys have kind of been also navigating bringing your folks back into the office.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to kind of talk to you and kind of learn a little bit about how you've been thinking about reentry, what you all have kind of done along that story, and maybe even what you learned along the way.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe a good starting place is, tell us, when did you first decide that you wanted to open up your doors and bring people back into the office?
So we're based here in Georgia. And so in May, when the governor of Georgia first released the shelter in place requirements that he had, it was in mid-May, the first thing that we did is say, if you want to come back in, you can. And it was interesting. So I have a really good friend. He's a CEO of a company he started. He's an entrepreneur, super successful guy. And so I was having this conversation with him. And he's like, I don't understand why even do this. He's like, I've been working from home. Like, it's great. I'm Zooming with people. I'm very effective and all that sort of thing. And I told him, I was like, no offense. He's a pretty wealthy, successful guy. It's like, no offense. Not everyone has the work from home setup that you do.
That's fair.
And I had been on calls with people in our company literally sitting inside their closet because it was the only place they could get any privacy from their kids, or one guy set up in his unfinished basement, and and it's just like crazy. And so we had people that were just like, I can't work from home, let me come back in. And we actually had I think it was about 12 to 15% of our people at that time that just came back into the office. We had, nothing was open. We had no food service amenities or, any of that kind of stuff. It was just like, we will now allow you onto the campus. And so we immediately went to about 15% of people coming on campus. And then in mid-June, as we saw the numbers coming down nationally and locally and all that, we announced that we were going to reopen at 30%. And so we were asking those who could to come back in 30% of the time. So, 1 to 2 days a week. And then from there, we went to where we were asking people to come in 50% of the time. One of the interesting things that happened is we actually never got 50%. We went to 30%. And even when we said, let's go to 50%, it stayed there because of the number of people who had medical, issues that were just reasons they probably didn't need to re-engage. And then, people who were sick or quarantined or, and then, school really made a big dent in that number as well, because here in Atlanta, most of the schools went virtual. Yeah. And so, we had so many parents who had to stay home because their kids were at home schooling and that sort of thing. So we never really got above 30%, and that's basically where we are today.
Okay. So what I love about that whole journey up to this point is that you gave people choice.
Right.
You said you've got choice. You can come in if you want to come in, and then if you're feeling uncomfortable, then you don't need to come in. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of that element of choice and why this is really important for people who have come in. But what as managers and leaders are thinking about protocols and put in place, like everything from wearing masks to whether or not we should have food. I mean, how did you think through some of those things?
Yeah, very carefully, and obviously very much in sync with the CDC guidelines and the governor's executive orders and all that sort of thing. Luckily for us, our workstations are 6 foot by 7 foot, and they're high enough that they have barriers. And so, like, even if we had every person in our office and they were sitting at their desk, they wouldn't need to be in a mask or anything. They would be socially distanced and they would have barriers. And so that part was actually pretty easy. We got kind of lucky that way. And then, just looking at all the things we need to do around cleanliness and access and that sort of thing, we made big changes in our food service, just in the way that works. And, if you've been in restaurants and that sort of thing, but there's no buffet style and all, kind of all that changed. But one of the things I would say that we did, especially early on, that might be a learning for others, is we made the cleaning visible. And so we literally took some of the people and the staff that come in at night, like in every office building, they come in and clean at night. We had them come in during the day so people could see what was happening. So we literally have had a guy for the last several weeks that goes around all day, every day, and he cleans every door handle, and people see him do it. And so the part of the strategy behind Let's Start Voluntarily and then just kind of, gradually move up and up is that we wanted to allow ourselves to test the safety protocols, the cleanliness protocols, that sort of thing, and make sure that we were doing it effectively. But then also give time for people who weren't coming back in to talk to their colleagues, say like, oh yeah, this is like a really safe place to be. As people are just adjusting, trying to figure out how they reengage in society in general, much less work. And so a lot of it, as people have come back in, it has been very organic, as they've just, kind of gotten comfortable and seen the safety in the office.
What I think is so tricky in all this is, so we can talk about this kind of in a very objective way. We're reopening an office and bringing people in, but it's not an objective conversation, right? It's a very emotional conversation. And I shared this on an earlier show. It hit me not too long ago that everyone kind of has their own COVID religion, right? They've got their own religious view on how they should be operating, and everyone else should be operating, and it kind of goes on the spectrum. From one end, it's terrified, it's a plague, it's going to kill everybody, including me. Right. And the other side is it's a conspiracy, and this is not even a real thing. And then everything in between. Right. And so I imagine that even people listening to this probably have their view, an opinion on whether you're moving too fast or too slow, right? And that's fine; they can have their opinion, right? We're just trying to educate. But what were some things that you experienced when you started to open? What were some feedback that people gave you, and how did you start to get people comfortable with this idea?
You're exactly right. And as a leader, one of the challenges among many over the last few months has been that any decision, anything on this issue is so polarizing. And as leaders, we're used to having to make the hard decisions, right? And and people aren't happy with some decisions we make, and used to that. But man, last few months, it's felt like every decision has been like that, and it's a vocal group that disagrees one way or the other. I mean, we had people that were kind of on one end of that spectrum when we announced even that we were allowing people to come back voluntarily. Just how can you do this? This is irresponsible. This is that sort of thing. When we announced that we were requiring masks on campus, it was a similar response. This is unconstitutional. You're violating my civil rights, that sort of thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, we can't win. And so, I think our strategy has been on this is that first of all, we want to be very, very transparent about our motives, about the information that we're consuming that is driving these decisions, and try to put that out there, and then allow people the time to kind of process this on their schedule, right? Kind of based on where they are.
Yeah.
And so every announcement that we've done has been like a month in advance, right? This is coming in a month. Here's why. This is why we think it's important. This is why we think is the right decision right now. And this is what's happening. And I will say, for people who are really on that end of the spectrum that are truly terrified, try to have a lot of compassion and grace to let them kind of deal with that and how we approach it. But it's really, we talk about this in general in communication. It's not about how you communicate. It's about how the other person hears, and really viewing everything we do through that filter of going, we got people all over the spectrum, and we got to allow all of them to process it the way that they're going to.
So I love a couple things in that I think are great takeaways. One, you're giving people time.
Yeah.
This isn't quite the same analogy, but I often find in some of the successful change management processes, they go through a migration period before they mandate.
Right.
You're not mandating people come back, but you're going through a migration period to get people comfortable before you say, and then this is when this new thing's going to go into place. But you're also giving transparency into your decision making,
right, and
your thinking. So you're saying, here's why we made the decision. Here's why it matters. Here's how we're thinking through this.
Yeah.
So people can see that, because you and I were talking before we started the show. What makes this so challenging for leaders is there's incomplete data. I mean, there's no one's working with a full set of cards.
That's right.
Right? We got what we got, and we have to use our gut instinct and assumptions, our culture, other ways to kind of decide how we want to navigate through this and make a decision.
Yeah.
And then once the decision's made, we're going to have people not like it.
That's right. Yeah. And it's not only incomplete data, but depending on where you get your data, it is completely contradictory.
Yeah. Yeah.
let me tell you, the last few months, if you watched Fox News and you watched CNN, we're living in completely different worlds.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the challenges as well.
Yeah.
Again, you got to realize your audience, they are more than likely getting their data from that kind of a resource, right? Yeah. And maybe it's not TV, it's social media, which is actually, algorithmically moving them to one extreme or the other, right? And so that was, again, when we announced we were reopening it all, I did a big company-wide, webcast kind of thing, and just said, I know you've seen all this data. I'm going to show you the data I look at. And you may think it's not the right data, it's whatever. You may agree with it, you might disagree with it. I just want you to know what I'm seeing, where I get it, how I view it, that sort of thing, so that whether you agree with the decision or not, you at least understand it. And I think that's been an important part as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, I'm looking at the clock, and we've got like a minute left till our break. And there's two really good questions that I want to ask you. So I'm going to take about 60 seconds to ask the questions.
Okay.
So that we can roll into break.
Sounds good.
So here they are, because I think they're really good. As I'm thinking about leaders and managers listening to this, I'm thinking of two things they're probably asking themselves. One, okay, Shane, what's the real value of having people back in the office? Like, why would I do that? Is there really any value? I mean, aren't we getting enough stuff done over Zoom or Teams? Why do I want to have people do that and even create that, ruffle those feathers? Because I can just do nothing and then probably play it safe.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you that question, kind of the benefit of it. And then the second question I want to ask is, when should a leader not reopen their office? So are there cases when you would say, yeah, maybe in those situations, you should hit the pause button for another month and kind of think it through a little bit more.
Yeah.
So kind of benefits of doing it and kind of why it's a good thing. And then when would you recommend, yeah, maybe you should wait a little longer.
Yeah.
I did that in 60 seconds.
Well done.
Okay. So stay tuned. We'll come right back, and then Shane's going to give us our answers.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening to the show. In case you haven't heard, Brandon's got a new book out. He's going to tell you all about it.
Thanks, Emily. So the book is The Hot Sauce Principle, How to Live and Lead in a World Where Everything is Urgent All the Time. And if you're like me, and like most of us, everything does feel urgent all the time. It's like hot sauce is being poured on everything, whether it's our work life, our family life, coming from our clients, coming from our boss. And so the book is a practical guide on how do we manage urgency. Not only how do we set proper boundaries, but how do we properly create urgency when we need to. So I wrote the book for you. I can't wait for you to get a copy.
Thanks, Brandon. Don't forget to check out The Hot Sauce Principle, available now on Amazon.com. Back to the show.
Welcome back. Of course, this is the Workplace Therapist Show, and I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And right before break, my guest, Shane Jackson, I hit him with two big questions. So Shane, we're going to start with the first one.
Okay.
So let's talk a little about what were some of those learnings that you've had, the good things and reasons why it is good to bring people back into the office. So for those leaders and managers that are thinking, why would I do this? What would you tell her or him?
So this is one of the biggest questions I've gotten from a lot of people, like, why go back at all? And I think you've heard and read from so many people about how COVID has opened the eyes of so many of what you can do remotely. And video conferencing. I mean, I was talking to some of our folks the other day, and they were joking about, you remember in March when our head of IT came in to show us how to use Teams? And we're like, whoa, like, you're on my computer. How cool is this? It is all new. And that is very valid. Like, we've learned, okay, there really is a lot more that you can do remotely. I think, though, that the opposite is also true. That I think for so many people, it has also helped them realize the value of being together. And I think both of those things are true. When we designed our offices and our campus, one of the things that I told our architects was that I wanted to create a lot of what I call collision points, which is places where people literally run into each other. And so we purposely made some things in our office inconvenient to get to so that everyone would have to go there and you like run into each other. And everything around our office is geared around that kind of interpersonal communication. You can Zoom with people, you can, email and text and that sort of thing. And there's a lot that can be done that way. We've learned that. One of the things that you lose, though, is the accidental communication.
Yeah.
Is the I'm getting on the elevator and you get on and you're like, oh, Brandon, I hadn't seen you forever. By the way, I've been meaning to ask you, whatever, or,
totally.
All those sorts of things. And there is so much magic that happens in those situations. In addition to just, how much more effective it is to communicate interpersonally and all that sort of thing. So for us, I think being reopened has had some business value because even at 30%, we're getting some of that. However, I would say right now that for us, doing everything we can to maintain the office as a safe place for people to be is not as much about the business value as it is the value to our people. This summer, as I was, doing Zoom calls and going through and just meeting with so many people through the organization, it became very clear to me how many people we have that are dealing with anxiety and even depression.
Yeah.
And I think that those are being, at a minimum, exacerbated by, if not caused by, isolation.
Yeah.
And I think one of the kindest things I can do for our associates right now is to provide a place where they can safely interact with their colleagues and friends. And I've had so many people tell me who were maybe kind of on that end of the spectrum that they were really nervous about getting back out. And, for whatever reason, they decided to try it one day. And what an impact it had on me. This literally just happened to me yesterday. I was on the elevator, leaving the office.
Just yesterday.
Nice. The office, the elevator stops, the floor opens up and this guy gets on. I was like, what are you doing here? And I literally just spoken to him like 3 weeks ago. This is a gentleman who had very legitimate like health reasons why he had not reengaged. And I was like, what are you doing here? And he said, I come and watching the numbers, talking to the people in the office and like kind of hearing it's really safe and, and that sort of thing. And so on Monday, I decided to try it. I've been back every day this week and I'll be back every day next week.
Nice.
And I was like, awesome, but like, why? He said, well, first of all, I came home on Monday and I was so different that my wife told me I was not allowed to work at home anymore. and he said, but it just made me realize how much I missed people. And he said, when I got to actually go in and walk down the hall and run into somebody and that sort of thing, he's like, even though we're talking through a mask, he was like, it was just amazing. He said, I didn't realize what it was doing to me. And it's, as a leader, there's a hard discernment to make. We want to do surveys and we want to, ask people what they want and that sort of thing. The challenge is sometimes what people say they want is not necessarily what they need.
Yeah.
And you got to be so careful of that line. You don't want to become patriarchal and, and imposing your values and that sort of thing. But I truly believe right now that there are a lot of people who are dealing with these mental health issues. And as leaders, as business owners, we have the opportunity to help. And your second question was, when should you not open?
Yeah.
When would you not do this?
That's the curveball.
And it's, I think you've got to, there's a lot of factors that go into that, from a health standpoint and we're spread and, and all that sort of thing. But I think a lot of it is coming down to knowing your people and thinking about what's truly best for them, and best for the business, and being able to make that judgment call of, the benefit of not being together right now just outweighs the benefit of bringing people back together. And so I think it's the same decision factor. But I would encourage leaders to consider the harder decision of how do we get a both and. The easy decision right now for a lot of businesses is just say, we're not going to come back together, right? We're just going to stay virtual.
Yeah.
It's the safer decision.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily the better decision. And I think if you can embrace the both and so that either we're going to be safe or we're going to be together, no, we're going to do both. We're going to be safe and we're going to be together. And how do we do that effectively? I think your people will come around and they'll get it. And that's what we're seeing now. I was with our one of our leadership teams yesterday morning, and I went around the room. I was asking them, I was like, guys, is it like, really? We're at 30%? Like, is there any value? Are you seeing it? Every one of them, no doubt. And these including some of my leaders that were against the decision to reopen.
Oh, really?
And they were like, there's no doubt. And they said, and by the way, our people start seeing it too. They're having lunch together. They're like, I'm not sure when they're having lunch, they're socially distanced, but whatever, and because it's like they have just refound their tribe and their group, and they're like, there's no doubt we can't go backwards.
Okay, so here's a tricky one in this. This goes back to my comment earlier around migrate and mandate. And I'm not going to, hold you down to the mandate side, but at some point, if we play the story out, we'll go from 30% to 40% to 50% to 60%. And what happens when we start to get to that place where we've got a team of 5 and 4 people are back and they're comfortable, and there's this one person, and it's now October 2021, right? It's a year from now, okay? And there's this one person that says, I'm not comfortable yet. How do we think through that? How do we start to, as leaders, create an environment that's either comfortable? We don't want to force anybody to do something they're not comfortable, but at the same time, there's a value in having the team together.
Right.
How do we prepare for that?
Well, so first of all, we may not want to force people to do something they're uncomfortable with, but as leaders and managers, we do that all the time.
That's fair.
Right. And so, there does come a point, and I will say we have already started messaging this. I'm like, guys, I have no idea when it's going to be. I think it will probably be sometime during 2021. So I've narrowed it down to 12 months for you. But there is going to be a day when we say, everybody needs to come back in. And, and so preparing for that. And, one of the analogies I've given on this is, you remember after 9/11, a lot of people were scared to fly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it really hurt the airlines because people were just like, they didn't know if it was safe to get on a plane. And that's when all the new security measures came and all that sort of thing. And, most people within a few months or, a year or two, whatever. My mother didn't get back on a plane for 7 years.
So for her, it was 7 years.
It was a long time. Yeah. And so,
was it still because of that?
Was it just kind of uncomfortable with the whole thing and fear of terrorism?
And you and I have also talked about this before the show, but I think it's important to bring up, you start to form habits.
That's right.
Right? You get in this rhythm and routine.
Yeah.
And then it's
absolutely.
And you can have good habits and bad habits.
That's
good
right.
habits like working out 3 times a week or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
But you can also have other habits where I just don't leave the house.
That's right. That's right.
That's my habit.
Yeah, and so we're going to have some people that through habit or fear or whatever, they're just not going to want to do it. And at some point, I mean, here's the thing that I think is important on this. So you have to decide what your model is. We believe that there is value in having our teams together. We say all the time, like, our business is a team sport. Communication and speed of communication, effectiveness of communication is highly, highly valuable. And we just think it's important to need to be together. We also, by the way, even pre-COVID, 42% of our associates worked remotely, at least part-time. Right. And so we're not anti-work from home. We never will be. It's, it has to be appropriate for the role and the team and all that sort of thing. But one of the messages I was giving our team this week is that, unfortunately, as leaders, we don't always have the luxury of being able to do what's best for an individual on our team, because we have to think about what's best for the team. And what's best for the team is not necessarily always the thing that's best for that individual or what they desire and want and that sort of thing. And so, this is our model. And I'm sure that there will be some people that will struggle on this for a while, and that there's going to be a date where we're going to say, this is our model and we need you here. And if you can't do it, then we got to, figure something else out. Yeah. And, so, yeah.
2021.
And it'll be in 2021.
Somewhere in that.
Yeah. Let's hope.
So you mentioned model, and I think we can look at model 2 different ways. We can model just kind of how we execute and get work done. It's kind of a business model. We can also say culture.
Yeah.
Which you and I spent a whole bunch of time on last time. And you've written a book on culture, and culture is a very big part of that secret ingredient to Jackson Healthcare success. So tell me a little bit about how, when you think about the culture of Jackson Healthcare, how did that also inform your decision?
Yeah. Such a important question. One of the things we've heard, and I think a lot of businesses are this way, was when we all went 100% virtual, like how the culture maintained, right? And the way we communicate and talk and all that maintained. And first of all, just understanding my definition of what culture is. It's the atmosphere that around how you make decisions as a team. And so it's we would never do that here, or this is the way we do this, right? It's the norms, like the norms of the group. This is how we behave when we're as a part of this group. And so certainly when you're working from home, some new norms kind of develop on how you do those sorts of things. The challenge is, so we kept doing new hire orientation. We do it once a month, and I speak to them. And at first we did it virtual, and then, we weren't hiring anybody for a little bit, but we've started doing them in person again. Everyone is sitting way far apart. It's really odd to speak to them because we're in this big room and everyone's really far apart, but it works. So I got this question at one of the first ones that we did in person. They said, Shane, how would you recommend that, as someone new to the organization, how do I learn the culture when I can't be around anyone? And I was like, that's a really good question. And I don't know the answer to that question. And so it is one thing to be able to have a culture virtually when you have people that have this history that's enabled them to understand what these norms are.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to join a group and learn those when you can't be around anyone. And, when we talk all the time about, like, hey, how did you learn to do this business? It's like, oh, because I sat next to Mike and I heard what he did, and that, or I'd, that sort of thing. it's really hard to enculturate someone new. Or just train them to do their job if you can't do that in person, at least in our business. I'm sure other businesses are very different. And so part of the education process we're going through right now is helping our people understand, again, like, hey, Brandon, you could do your job 100% effectively from home, right? Got it. The problem is I need you to be here to help these other two people learn about our culture, learn about how we treat each other, learn about how we treat our customers. And so this is back to like what may be best for you and your wants, needs, and desires is to work from home. What's best for the team is for you to be exposed to these other new people that we're trying to enculturate into our team.
That's a really powerful message. I think it's a really important way to think about it too. It's just even those unspoken things that you're sharing. Yeah. And that could be a whole other show by itself, because that's one common challenge I hear a lot of leaders and managers ask. Okay, how do I onboard people and train people virtually? Because that's not something that we've ever had to do. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Well, Shane, this has been amazing. So thank you for sharing this with us. So I ask all of my guests this question, so I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
What is one life hack you might have for us on how we can either have better conversations at work or at home? Any tips or tricks you might have for us?
Better conversations at work or at home.
Or even build better, healthier relationships. So you could go down that path too.
Oh my gosh. You already threw me one curveball. You're not allowed two in one interview.
That's more of a change up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Man, I need a minute on that. Well, here's one I'll give you, and I'll give you this because it's one I struggle with and I have to remind myself all the time. I don't think you can be present with someone with a phone in your hand. Mm. And I get in trouble with that at work, and I get with that one at home. And so I will tell you, even I have young kids, and one of the things I've had to learn to do is that there's a spot that my phone goes while we're eating dinner, and it's a place I can't reach it.
Nice.
Because even if I'm not checking it, if it's sitting here, it's a habit. And so I just, there's probably not a text I'm going to get that can't wait the 25 minutes that dinner's going to take. And it's worth being present for my family for that.
So I've got a variation of this where I keep getting in trouble on. I wake up and I grab my phone and look at it. And I'm trying, and my wife says it's really bad. I'm just saying I'm getting ready for the day.
Right.
So any opinions on that?
I think it's good. I actually heard someone this morning say the same thing I was talking to. And I think depending on how you start your day, a lot of people try to start with some quiet time or exercise or that sort of thing. It's hard to get yourself in the frame of mind you want for that if the first thing you do is you're checking Twitter or whatever, right, or email or that sort of thing. And so I think there's something to it. The other is don't sleep by your phone. Like, see, I keep
this is also my alarm clock.
Yeah, I get it. Alarm clocks are cheap. You can get one for $10. It'll be worth it.
She's clapping, and she just gave 2 thumbs up. Nice. I lose. But you didn't lose because you listened to this podcast today. So thank you, Shane. So if people want to learn more about you, Jackson Healthcare, where can they go?
JacksonHealthcare.com, and there's information about the company, information about me, and then also encourage everyone to follow me on LinkedIn. About once a month, I put out something about leadership and some of the things I've talked about today. Actually, some of the things I've talked about today, I'm going to be posting on LinkedIn next week.
Yeah, and thanks for not only leading through this and all the great work that you all do to help all of our healthcare providers, but also just in terms of how you're thinking through the workplace and helping us kind of learn all along your journey. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Happy to. Thanks.
Yeah. And thanks for listening and watching the show. And hopefully you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher. If you're not, you should. And if you are, please rate and review the show. That's how more people find the show and we grow our tribe. If you want additional resources to help you get better as a leader and manager, check out theworkplacetherapist.com. That's got blog posts, articles, prior shows, all there for you. And if you haven't bought a copy of my newest book, The Hot Sauce Principle, How to Live and Lead in a World Where Everything's Urgent All the Time. Shane's holding up a copy right there, waving it to the camera. Thank you, Shane. You should. It's a great read. I wrote it for you to help you you make your life easier and smoother and manage all that hot sauce in life. You can pick it up on Amazon, Kindle, and you can also buy it on theworkplacetherapist.com, and you can buy a personalized copy, and I'll sign it and mail it to you. So until our next show, have a great week and an awesome life.